Recording live from where?
Northeast LA, where we staged the Filthy Armenian reading last night. I don't know if you saw that. Do you know who that is?
Oh, I saw that. Yeah. I mean, it was last night.
So yeah, it was last night. It was
That's
actually
good.
pretty good. Like he did it in a different format than people usually do. He did like interviews more, than just like straight readings. And it was pretty funny. It was actually pretty well done.
Was that for Apocalypse Confidential, or was it an independent thing?
I think it was just independent.
Oh man. So what have you been up to lately? It's been I know I should do introductions, but I'm assuming people know who you are, but because I always forget, it's always an hour since, sometimes an hour before I get to introductions. So I am with Issac Simpson, disgraced propagandist. And what do you do? Who are you? Again? There you go.
What is it that you do?
Since we talked. Yeah.
So I'm a writer. I write kind of gonzo-y, like magazine-y articles. I've had a few like pretty successful ones in the past year. And I also do branding and publicity and like advertising essentially for people and companies in our little thing. And that can range from, I have a industrial metals manufacturer, metals fabricator, and I have that two, very cool brands like Masa chips, and I was in New York Times talking about Hestia. So yeah, that's what I do. I come from mainstream. I pretty much have been doing the exact same thing for 12 years, which is like writing like essays on the internet about doing, then doing branding. And I've done it at the height of the industry, and I've done it at the bottom of the industry, and that's what I continue to do.
No, that's great. I mean, I wanted to talk about branding because of your article in American Mind about the advertising industry. But I originally want to talk about we'll get to Vibe Camp. But this is fascinating. I guess I remember there was this Twitter space, but not to like put out the participants, but they brought up a salient point about the work like people do when it comes to the branding of dissident thought, whether it be Masa Chips, the chip company, the non-seed oil, or even like Hestia cigarettes or whatever. Which I don't know. Maybe I'll have to get you to ship some to my GF. So because they're not you can't ship cigarettes in Canada. You have to have paperwork. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But the indigenous people get away with it, but not ordinary Canadians.
Well, it's the same here. I mean, that's where Hestias have to be made. They have to be made on Native American reservations.
Maybe one day, maybe Hestia. I mean, who knows? In Canada, it would be impossible to get like a dissident cigarette brand. Maybe, who knows? I mean, now that Trudeau has honored a Grenadier Galician SS officer in the middle of Parliament. Did you see that?
Yeah, what was that? I like heard about this, but I can't. What happened?
Well, Z-Man came to Canada to see his great friend Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau, and they honored a 91-year-old or something like that veteran who was part of the Galician division of the Waffen SS.
Oh yeah.
But of course, it's Ukrainian, so it's liberal and.
Right.
It's hilarious. But so, anyways, the criticism was that I guess right off the bat is it's sort of like, is it a grift or is it a marketing scheme, or is it going to potentially open up a base of consumers that have the right intentions in terms of like seed oils and like non propaganda regime slop But then there's always the danger of, well, my good friend Kathrine Dee, who's also now my co-host, she said, in the future there will be like raw egg and like primal diet cookbooks in Walmart, and there's always a danger of being commodified, or sort of, there's always a danger of neutralization through branding. Of, like there will be like a dissident McDonald's one day. And, well, McDonald's Japan already did that. The anime, family. So, but as a guy who's like in the belly of the beast of marketing, like, how would you defend yourself?
I guess. So it's kind of a two-part question, right? Because on the one hand, you're talking about the commodification of rebel art, which is a tale as old as time, right? I mean, that's what they've been doing 100%. Forever. And so, that absolutely will happen to us. It already is happening to us. I mean, you already see that happening. You already see people stealing our stuff. I mean, the reason why we're nicely protected is because the mainstream can't really touch any of our actual ideas or imagery.
Oh, God, no.
You know what I mean? Because they'll be immediately, that's racist or whatever. I mean, it's not racist, but that's what they'll call it.
Well, it depends how far you go.
That's what we're talking about,
yeah, right. Exactly. But but for brevity, well, I guess I don't know. Like, what would you characterize yourself before you answer the question? Are you more of like, I mean, you're obviously more of like the tech orientated, like Curtis Yarvinite. I mean, it's unfair to describe you as a Yarvinite, but like, what would you? Yeah, what would you describe yourself as? I mean, obviously you're not an anime racist or
no, I'm not a gripper. I mean, I can't be. I'm so I can't be a gripper.
Yeah,
I probably would be.
If not to censor that word for you.
Too, if I didn't have the luxury of not being, maybe I would be. But no, I'm like, the way I see the divide, and I'm sure you can tell me, keep me honest on this because you know this stuff way better than me. But I see it kind of, the divide is trads and vitalists. Right, of everybody on the new right, and I'm definitely in the vitalist camp. I'm basically a libertine. I'm a gonzo writer. I go around and drink and do drugs and write about it. So it's like I'm never going to be a trad. You know what I mean? Like, it's just never going to happen. I mean, I am married and I do believe in religion, and I believe in I definitely don't believe in glorifying sin and glorifying degeneracy. I mean, I definitely agree that we shouldn't do those things. But I would say I'm more on the libertine side, the Baptist side of the right, where it's like, be a crazy pirate type of thing,
Yeah, but I guess but the way that comes out is in more like mediated forms nowadays. Like, I mean, the Silicon Valley venture, not to say that there's a one-to-one comparison, obviously, but it's almost as if like the Silicon Valley venture capitalist is, I mean, as fake and sort of simulacra as it is, it's almost like our equivalent of the robber baron or the explorer, which, I mean, that has a number of other questions that are probably leads to negative conclusions, because I don't exactly fully trust those people. But but you're like, but from your perspective, I guess, like, would you say that that's an apt comparison? I know we didn't answer the original question, but we'll get to it. We'll get to it. This is how my mind works, and this is how everyone is subjected to my my flights of fancy and thought. But
you're a rhizome, right? You're a rhizome.
Yeah, well, my graduate education was put to good use.
So I think the question that you're asking is, are tech people the new explorer? Are they the new star business person, or I don't even know what you'd call it, star mogul of our day? Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's undeniable that that's what tech people are, and I mean, you can't really blame it either, because the old guys explored, or they built the machines, or they built things they didn't have. Of course, this generation is going to be known for building the stuff we didn't have, which is the pipes of the internet. So it makes sense that these are the guys that we kind of worship today. I mean, I think tech is pretty stupid, honestly. Like, I'm not, I mock the whole thing. I'm in it kind of, but I think that, I think it's pretty lame, man. I mean, I think of all the, Of all the things we could have been born with, we get stuck with the tech generation. I mean, it's like, ugh, it's just so kind of like lame and like, oh,
born just in time to manufacture widgets on a digital
scale. Right, like at mass scale, and not even widgets. It's not even widgets. It's manufacturing SaaS programs. I mean, it's like it's the worst thing. So yeah.
But the first question about marketing and if the dissident scene is like I think even the language of like dissident scene would get like, here are the cool new hipsters that all the kids are gonna get involved and they're gonna start posting about haplogroups or whatever. Like it's so
yeah. I mean, you already see it. You already see this. Look at Praying. Have you seen the brand Praying?
Praying. So, what's this?
Praying is this brand that's like the sexy brand in New York right now. The whole Times Square thing is this, and it's
okay,
like,
okay.
It's like hot girls saying like "I love God," like on their boobs.
I am an angelic, ethereal e-girl post-Tumblr aesthetic.
Exactly.
Like I only eat on Tuesday. Like it's
No, exactly. And it's like, this is what I say about Times Square. It's just rich Jew girls pretending to be like Catholics. And so it's obviously like it obviously is.
Some of them are decent. Some of them are decent.
Let's not great. I like them a lot. I'm not criticizing them. I'm just saying like that's basically what they are.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I like those girls. I think I've only had good experience with them, so I have nothing bad to say about them at all. They're very cool. They're very.
We're not casting shade on Honor Levy, please.
No, not at all. I've met her once. She's very cool. Annika, who runs Forever Mag, is great. They've
Forever Mag does have a lot of good work.
Yeah. Oh, the aesthetic is fantastic. So I'm just being honest about like what they are, and I'm just saying like. The aesthetic already is going mainstream. I have this whole theory of like what happened to culture in 2014. It's split into like zombie culture, which is like getting further and further woke, which is they've forced it to be. And then real culture, which is like where we are. Culture wanted to go right and they didn't let it go right. So that split it into two things. It's like culture that you see on, my favorite quote was from, I think it was Perfume Nationalist, who was actually read at the thing last night. He was just like, he posted a picture of some like two celebrities from the Oscars. And it was just like, nobody knows who these people are at all. They're just like fake celebrities. Like,
did you see that list of like the top young, like was it under 40 or under 30 actors? And it's like, who are these people? Yeah. Like the only one I could recognize was the Bella Ramsey girl, but that's because she, but that it's like the other people, who cares? It's like Hollywood's over. I think it's the writer's strike was like an apocalypse for them in some way.
Essentially. That's what somebody was just saying that last night. It was like, that was it. It's totally done now. Like, forget it.
Yeah. But about Times Square though, I mean, there is a conscious effort of like edging towards reaction and like giving little winks and nods here and there, but not, not really committing, if you will. But
exactly.
I mean, maybe they do in the long run, because I think in the long run, maybe culture would get so bad that to only be slightly left of Julius Evola will be like the mainstream, but like the fake mainstream will be like whatever the culture industry pumps out. But it'll be so grotesque and horrendous for most people that it won't,
Yeah.
But because that was like the basis of your article on advertising, which I wanted to get into, if you could like elaborate, because like, and speaking of Forever Mag, maybe next year they'll profile when my book comes out. So who knows?
They should. I hope.
Yeah. But a lot of my book is basically critiquing. I hate the word woke. I think it's so overplayed. But like for brevity's sake, like woke advertising.
Yeah.
What I call neoliberal kitsch. And you have like you were alluding to in the article that it's not necessarily, I mean, it is in a lot of ways like sort of mercenary capitalism of like, well, we have to be peer. And this is the basis. A lot of what I write about is that, it's not just the maximization of a market base, but also like the compliance of it has to be like a certain way. And it's like our version of the Hays Code. If the Hays Code was, trans by POC. instead of like Catholic.
Stop killing black women.
Yeah.
Stop killing black trans women.
No, stop. Yeah, exactly. Stop killing black trans women. So, but it's like there's that, but then you're also saying that, you know, a lot of leftists, they say, well, you're not sincere about it, right? But then the people on the right, they're like, well, they have to do this because it's like this is what the bricolage of culture has gotten to. But you're saying no, like, and I know, for example, Bappy like critiques that angle of like it's purely just market commodification. There's something else going on. So, in your opinion, having worked in the advertisement industry, and I'm assuming that you can't go back. I mean, at this point, well, maybe you can.
I know I can never go. I can do like a little bit of freelancing for big brands until. So it's so funny when and I'll answer your question, but it's hilarious when I get these freelance jobs. So I'll go on the first meeting, and it's like a huge brand that you would have heard of, and I'm just doing some little freelance writing job for them because I still am on some list that they have. You know what I mean? And I'll go on, and it'll be 5 women, of course. And, you know, all different shapes and sizes. It's like, you know, of course, there's the one in the wheelchair. There's the one with like an eye patch.
Like the Apple commercial with Octavia Butler. Yeah, Mother Nature.
Right. Yeah, they're all completely like, you know, rainbow. And then there'll be one with blue hair or whatever it is. And, you know, it, and the thing. And she'll be like, oh, yeah, I'm the DIB, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Manager.
Belonging manager.
Now they changed it to belonging because I think DEI sounded like die, so they were like, oh, we can't have that. So, and you realize, like when I'm on the call with this woman, she's an inquisitor. Like her job, she's a straight up like hall monitor. Like her job is to have a meeting with me, Google me, and then fire me. Like that's why she's there. That's her entire point. You know, like she's a cleansing mechanism to make sure that I don't get a job there, you know?
Well, even like Isaac Simpson, American Mind, that's enough to get you.
Oh yeah, I'm done. If you Google me at all, I'm just I'm toast. So
let alone like exploring your Substack and your podcast. That you know, but anyway, so that's funny. That's like the Saudi Arabia. It's like Saudi Arabia. They have like the morality police.
Yeah, that's what they are. They are literally the morality police of the corporate sphere.
So, but have you worked at big brands in the past? Like, I know you probably don't want to like out yourself.
No, I'm not open book, man. I'll tell you. I mean, I don't want to name super specific
companies.
But, no, I mean, I can. Look. The thing is, in advertising, the great thing about advertising is that it doesn't matter where you went to school. It doesn't matter if you went to Harvard. You are judged in advertising only by, or at least formerly, only by the quality of your book, right? So that's like, you know, when Don Draper carries around that big portfolio and it's got his like ideas in it, that's what every advertising copywriter has that. So I have actually 2 websites. I have like a more based one and a more normie one. And that just contains all my like big hits from the past before, you know, like, I've won awards and stuff. So that's open knowledge, you know, like, so it's not like I'm not going to like hide it because it's like, I have worked for the NFL. I've worked for Uber. I've done all that stuff. And it's, you know, it's on my portfolio. So I might as well talk about it. So I've done what I do now at Will, which is branding and publicity. I have done that at the very top. I've done it at the very top of that entire industry. That said, the height of the branding industry is a little bit different than the height of what you would think of as traditional advertising, right? Like
an illustration and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm in a little bit of a niche, but I have seen the heights of the whole thing at certain points. So
did you ever hear any mention when you were at Uber of my good friend Eli Schiff? You know, he wrote that book, Uber's Undoing.
No, well, so I wasn't at Uber. I was at an agency that was doing the brand of Uber. So
okay, that's how it works. Yeah, they sublet it. Yeah.
Eli Schiff, though, I definitely know that name, and I think what did he write?
He wrote Uber's Undoing about their design, and he like ripped it to shreds. And this is when he was doing the Humans of Flat Design. Concept and he's like infamous in the UI design world.
Oh,
and
cool. Yeah,
he's
yeah.
a
I
good
know.
friend of mine. Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah, I know this name. I've definitely heard this name like many times.
And he wrote that book about Uber that you could still download, and they were like the whole marketing team was like, up in a panic because
Really? I gotta read this. This sounds really good. I can't find it. What is the book? Oh, Uber's Undoing.
yeah, yeah,
Nice.
yeah. You'll
Wow,
get a kick out of it.
they really buried this thing, man. It's like you
Yeah,
can't see this well at all.
yeah. I think he got into some trouble for it, but I don't know why Elon has not reinstated him yet, because the way they clipped him off of Twitter was for BS reasons. Like the people that like did the new design of Twitter, this was pre Elon. This was during who was the Indian?
Uh,
Prague.
oh yeah, Parag, right? Parag
Yeah,
Versailles.
I
Yeah.
think Dorsey was still there a little bit, but the design team, people like designers that worked at Twitter, they hated Eli Schiff. And so when he did this thread about this like illegal immigrant Uber driver, or it was like a Lyft driver or whatever he had a bad encounter with, they're like, oh, that's racism. And this was back in the day where like you could
Oh,
just clip people, like it was really up to just like if someone hated you, like there would be certain accounts where like someone in Twitter would hate them and they just kept getting banned. Like my friend Nuke Telly, or well, I think Spinach Bra was like that. They would like get rid of Inkblot, my good friend Inkblot, and someone in Twitter just hated them, and so they would like get rid of them or like
right.
whatever pretense. But
it was just a unilateral. Dude, I'm
Yeah.
so fascinated by this undoing of Uber thing. It's like impossible to get. I can't like find it. Oh, you just pay whatever you want. Okay.
yeah,
This is
he
so
set
cool,
that
dude.
up
I've
so anyone
never
could
heard of
get it.
this. This is great. This is like right up my alley, this type of shit.
Oh yeah.
What happened to Eli Schiff?
He's still around. He's coming back. He still does independent work, but since they got rid of him on Twitter, like he still has Instagram. He's still on Telegram, but I got to invite him on my show pretty soon one day, because I always had an idea of like actually co-writing something with him on the flat design thing, because the notes for my book was originally going to include a chapter on it, but it's become so winding and expansive that I might have to like save that for a co-production with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know why Elon hasn't reinstated him. Like he would be the first, because his banning was like totally arbitrary, based on designers that hate him. So it's like, yeah.
This is awesome, dude. I've like totally missed this whole thing, which is weird because it's like I'm usually kind of into this stuff, so I'm surprised I haven't heard of this at all.
Oh yeah,
this is very cool.
So so you were saying an advertisement, like an advertisement, like a campaign for it. It's different than traditional like illustration or like the aesthetic of a corporation. Like, are you basically considered just marketing, or like
no? So I'm okay. Yeah. So like it used to be everything was done by either the brand or the agency of record. There was just two things, right? And the agency of record was, this is the Don Draper days. They have one big company, and that big company does everything. They buy the media, and the way that they finance themselves traditionally, and like the heyday of advertising, is there was no fees. It was just the agency funded itself by a 15% commission on all of the ad space bought. Right. So a company would spend $10 million a year on ad space, and then the agency would make 1.5 of that. And that's how it was funded. And the thing about an advertising agency is there's zero overhead. So it's just, and I know this now, like, I mean, the overhead is the labor, right? But there's no like actual things I need to buy. So, I mean, besides a few programs and stuff. So that it seems like 15% is not a lot, but when there's zero overhead, it actually adds up. Those guys got really rich, right? Because the companies were spending hundreds of millions, billions on ad space every year. Then along came what they call procurement departments. So procurement departments are assholes inside brands who are there to like cut costs. Right. And they destroyed that entire model. So they stopped paying the 15% commission, and then they basically balkanized the agencies into these tiny little agencies here and there. And so that's what I wrote about in one of my American Mind pieces is like, I've been up, I did like a huge pitch for Wells Fargo for their summer, winter giving campaign. And I went up to BBDO, which is their agency of like their big ad agency who does their like Super Bowl commercials and stuff. So they were kind of like the big boy, but then there were like 10 sub agencies that each have their own little specialty. So there'll be like branding, there'll be like the Black agency, there'll be the Latino Spanish language agency, there'll be the experiential agency, there'll be the sustainability agency. There's all these like little sub agencies now that fulfill various.
But then who does, for example, commercials that require like 5 or stock actors and a setup and a director? Like, does that get sublet to like the ad agency hires a production company to do that?
That's exactly right. So when you work at a big ad agency, you have what are called lunch and learns. And lunch and learn.
The corporate speak is incredible.
I'm sure they call it something else now because that even sounds outdated. But lunch and learns are always a production company coming and showing you their reel because they want to be chosen by you when it comes time to make the $2 million, $5 million Super Bowl ad or any ad. They're just sitting around being like, please pick us. When it comes time to fund the actual video.
And it's the same, for example, if there's animation, like there's an animated commercial, they would hire graphic designers and animators to or a production company. Like the one, I know this because I was looking into the one that did for my book, the Chobani Solar Punk commercial. And they got a guy that was like, he worked for Studio Ghibli, but you could tell like he was kind of phoning it in compared to like the usual amount of detail required to do like a Ghibli film. So it's like I guess they hire an animation studio to like come in there and do their propaganda.
It totally depends, right? So like some of the big, and now again, the whole industry now is like destroyed. So it's like you're talking about just a mess that doesn't make any sense. But formerly, ideally, you had animators in house. And, maybe if you needed, so the core team of an ad agency is a copywriter and an art director. Those are they partner up and they have like the ideas, right? They pitch the ideas to their creative director who then sells them with the account person to the brand. Once the brand says yes, then you have a budget and it's up to that creative director to make the thing that you pitched, right? Whether it's a commercial, whether it's a bunch of Facebook ads, whether it's a whole new website, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And, the big concepts will have all of that stuff, right? Like, my favorite campaign ever, Most Interesting Man in the World, that's not just a commercial. That's 10 years worth of commercials. It's a website. It's the
aesthetic design of
the aesthetic. Exactly. Yeah. So, artists hate creative directors, but creative directors come in and they hire the artist to do it, but they're not really doing it. So they're just kind of like sitting behind the thing being like, no, can you make the brand bigger? You do all this stuff. So it's a weird dance, it's an odd dance between like the people who actually do the work versus who sell in the work, etc.
Well, who makes like the actual decision to launch an iconic brand or a commercial that becomes like, for example, the Zoom Zoom kid? I think he's like 30 years old now or something. But
this is
Mazda, yeah. Everyone remembers the Zoom Zoom thing, right?
Zoom Zoom, yeah.
Like who designs the catchphrase? Who green lights the sort of the identity of that corporation in general or that consumer brand? Like say McDonald's, I guess like McDonald's Japan had like a bit of leeway, so they have like the ability to like hire a manga artist to do the little kid and the little girl with the two parents.
But I thought it was it was beautiful. It was perfect.
I broke people's brains. So.
Yeah. Well, so again, like you're talking about all sorts of different things. Like,
yeah.
So like branding, what I did is the very top of the funnel, right? So you're not setting the campaign identity, you're setting the brand identity. So you're literally telling like Uber Eats when I worked for them what they're like, McDonald's, I'm loving it, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about that global line that's going to be on absolutely everything. Like
It
everything's
will
going
be
to come back to
everywhere.
that.
It will be in
You're right.
Karachi and it will be in Paris. Yeah.
Yes, it'll be global, right? So that's what I do. Like I do the very top, right?
Mm,
A little bit lower, like the more traditional advertising is it's not doing the brand line, it's doing a campaign. So a
right.
campaign will be like, you're not you when you're hungry, Snickers, right?
Yeah.
That's not the Snickers tagline, but it was for a long time because that campaign was so popular and so successful, right? But really, all that was just 1 year's idea for a campaign. It just worked so well that they extended it for a long
Yeah.
time, right?
And that incorporates like public ads or like stunts or like giving up free stuff. Like I
Yeah.
remember, I think this first season of Sopranos was advertised by hiring taxi drivers in New York to like have the arm hanging out of the back or something like that. That was like, yeah.
Wait, the arm hanging out of the back?
Like, yeah, it was like a hit where, you know, they would get a taxi company to feature like a prosthetic arm that looked real, like coming out of the back of the trunk. Like, yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Those type of stunts, right? And once
yeah,
you have your core idea, you can do all kinds of stuff like that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Or like I think 28 Days Later in UK they marketed the film by having people in hazmat suits go to theaters and like quarantine, like do a staged quarantine thing.
Yeah.
So
Like
to scare the
guerrilla
hell out of people.
stunts. Yeah. And there's agencies that specialize in that stuff. You know, they're
Yeah.
called like, you know, experiential agencies. I actually worked at one of them for a while.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, but then in your opinion, like what really drives corporations to adopt a certain ideological bent in terms
Yeah.
of the aesthetic choices they make and in terms of their appeal? Because it can't just all be like, well, we have to appeal to the maximum number of people. Or is it really just like the people working for them have a particular ideological persuasion? Or is it something more nebulous and spiritual than we could ever imagine?
So do you mean in the, again, I agree with you, we need a new word, but in the woke marketing context, or you just mean like any?
Yeah, like in your article for the American Mind, like how things actually operate on that like gut level of like this, you know, the NFL having like trans people in their ads, like yeah, because you know when you think of the or like the NHL having, which actually there's a Maple Leafs game today, so you know, but like you know the NHL having like whatever the once a month they have the rainbow jerseys that you know. I believe Meatball Ronnie said that any player from Florida, whether it's the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Panthers, that they don't have to wear it.
Yeah.
So I gotta give Meatball Ron that. You know, he let the Stahl brothers not wear the jersey, so it's like, wear the rainbow jersey, bigot. So
yeah. So this is what's I say this all the time, so I'm sure you've probably heard me say this, but I find the question of why to answer woke marketing to be the most fascinating question like in public life ever.
Right.
Because we still don't have an answer. We still don't really know. Like I've done a lot of work trying to answer the question, and I've, you know, coming from my own experiences can tell you what I experienced. And of course, you know, there's all kinds of reasons. There's because Blackstone has its DEI scores, and really these companies don't even give it about selling products. They just want to get cheap money from Blackstone, right? I mean, they care about their stock price, so they could give a shit about, you know, Bud Light. You know, 1% of global revenue is gone for AB InBev because of that, but it's still, I mean, 1% is a lot, but it's still not that crazy, right? You know what I mean? It's like they don't really care about selling products anymore. There's that explanation. You know, there's that it actually is a capitalist thing. And like some people are like, oh, they've done research on these things and young people care about trans rights. So, you know, it makes sense from that perspective, right? You know, there's the explanation of that, yeah, it's tone deafness. It's just that these people don't get it, that they're just sort of separated from their class. There's the any publicity is good publicity explanation. You know, there's a million explanations. And the you know, that it's actual Satan, which is maybe my
It could be it.
my
Yeah.
favorite.
Could be it.
So there's a million things. My personal explanation is these are all factors, of course.
Yeah.
And it's a complicated beast, but in reality, to me, it's a longhouse thing. I think it's a longhouse thing, meaning that when I've been inside these companies, they're just not thinking about it. Like they're not sitting around plotting it out.
Yeah.
It's more that it's a bunch of women who are completely disconnected from the people that they're supposed to be selling things to.
Yeah.
And they're competing with each other for like equity points or whatever. And so they're just blindly doing that, like without.
But why Dylan Mulvaney though? Why did it have to be Dylan Mulvaney? I guess it's just like, why does anyone get discovered? I guess it's just happenstance. Or is it there's something else going on? I don't know.
No, it's because Alyssa Heinerschneid, the person who did that, is, she's a New York, extremely wealthy woman. She lives in an $8.5 million condo with her, fancy boyfriend. She's in the New York Times, or husband. She's in the New York Times, marriage pages. And they're all competing with each other at dinner parties to like show off how woke they are, I guess, or whatever it is. And she thinks, oh, look at this fun new star. She doesn't even think this person is famous because they're trans. She thinks, oh, this person's famous because they're like really sassy and fun and like a theater, like, wow, they're fabulous. Yeah. And, she doesn't know jack about the brand. And so she's been placed there. And so she goes, oh, we'll make her or him, we'll make him a commemorative can. We'll send him 10 grand, maybe 50 grand, however much they paid for that. And he'll post a silly video and that's it. And she probably thought nobody will even notice.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
It's sort of like in the music industry. I remember that one line back in like the very early, wasn't very early, it was like 2012, but the early days of like people doing podcasts on YouTube. What's his name? Chris Ott. He used to write he was the founders of Pitchfork, or one of them.
Yeah.
But then he realized how terrible Pitchfork became as like fake hipsterdom. And Pitchfork now is like, don't even, but he said something interesting. He goes, back in the days, you say you have like, local dime store indie band or like a punk show that's in a garage and that's their CD release party. And the label has like maybe 500 prints of this CD. Now that like garage show that launches the CD is being sponsored by Absolute Vodka and to a huge brand, it's pennies on the dollar, but to the scene of like quote unquote authentic underground indie or punk music, it's like, that's a huge deal. That's like you're selling out, or you're like being consumed by something, or you have like the aesthetic of transgression. And so I think like to a big brand like Absolute Vodka, it means nothing to sponsor a show and to like put out free samples.
Yeah.
In
the
middle of Diamond Square or wherever, or Williamsburg.
Exactly.
Is Williamsburg still the hipster? Is it now?
No. It's back to Manhattan. It's gone in a circle.
Went from Williamsburg to Bushwick, and now
Now it's back. It went in an exact perfect circle, and now it's Lower Manhattan again. Yeah. So
yeah, it's crazy. But so I guess like for a corporation to spend money on like who is that guy that was, it was the height of the BLM movement. He had the blue shirt, not cardigan, like the vest. That one, you never hear about him anymore. He like disappeared, but he was everywhere. He was in ads. What was his name? D-Ray?
D-Ray?
McKesson, that guy, D-Ray McKesson. Do you remember that guy?
McKesson. Yeah. What? Why do I remember this? Let me.
He's
Google
got the blue vest, and he was like he was everywhere during the 2020.
Oh my god, yeah,
Yeah.
dude. I vaguely remember this. I like
But-
have. Oh god, these people are such grifters. It's unbelievable.
but like he was everywhere. I think like even like huge corporate sponsors gave him money.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, this was the giant, you know, St. Floyd money transfer of 20 whatever year that was, 2022. When was that?
2021.
2020. Yeah, dude. No, I mean, I didn't. Yeah, I remember this. I vaguely remember this, but it's pretty amazing.
Well, there were people that speculated that the that one, did he actually make it to the NFL? The Kaepernick guy, like they speculate that was like a woke washing thing, that the NFL was aware of him and they did it because it was,
Well, the beautiful thing about this story is that he was a good quarterback. You know, he had a great year. He made it to the Super Bowl with the 49ers, and he played really well that year. Then something happened the next year, and he sucked. It was weird. He like showed up, and he was really bad the next year. And
it happens in hockey all the time.
Yeah, that is sometimes they just burn out. Like you don't know what happens. So he really sucked, and he got benched the following year after they lost the Super Bowl. They didn't win, but they went. Yeah. And then like a year later after that, you start hearing rumblings of this guy's kneeling, and it was just like, you know, he's an adopted kid of some, of course, rich liberal people, I'm sure.
Yes.
And like it was just like you have Muhammad Ali, right? This is why everything now is just this replica of the 60s. Like Muhammad Ali refused the draft at the height of his career. Like he really sacrificed. He went to jail. Like this guy was really sacrificing for what he believed in, you know, seriously.
Yeah, no Viet ever called me the, you know what. Yeah.
Yeah, and now you have Kaepernick pretending to do the same thing, but he's already benched. He's already not playing. So it's like,
you got to win a Super Bowl or two to do it.
It would be one thing if you were the starting quarterback and then you did it, but you waited until you were like benched and had no attention, and then but we're supposed to take this so seriously, which was always my criticism of what he was doing.
Yeah, no, but that's what I mean. Like it became like a career revival thing. I mean, you know, that's. I mean, I'm not a fan of football, you know, but from what I could tell, like that just happens. I mean, you know, it happens in the NHL all the time. A good player gets drafted from the minor leagues or from the AHL or the CHL, and then like, they burn out or like they're not, or I guess they'll become like. I shouldn't say Eric Lindros because Eric Lindros actually was good, but it's just that, he burned himself out. But, it doesn't matter. But now there's like this easy avenue to like revive your career. And like anything, actors do this all the time. Like, who's that one C-lister, that woman that became like popular? She's also a fellow Italian.
Milano? Rose McGowan? No.
Rose McGowan was because she was calling out the
Weinstein.
Yeah. Which, I mean, but this was the Alyssa Milano. She like became a full-time activist, and it's like, Trump was a miracle for a lot of these people.
Wait, what?
I said Trump was a miracle for a lot of these
it's like
failing people.
Who was the other one? The Southern woman who was like hot for 5 seconds and then was like screaming on stage about her period blood.
Ashley Judd.
Ashley Judd.
Yeah. She took this
poem. Like my vagina.
She took this poem from was it Gorman or was it some other grads? What do they call it? The MFA students. Like it was some woke MFA student where she took the poem. She's like, I am a nasty woman. That was incredible. Because it just Trump like saying something to Hillary Clinton. I remember I was in grad school when that debate happened. I was listening in the parking lot before I went home from a late class. And I remember he said that, he goes, "You nasty woman." And like it was, and that became like a huge like how many people got accepted into MFA program, like how many women got accepted into MFA programs because they wrote like nasty woman on a piece of artwork
somewhere on a piece of paper, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
They're just like, yeah, we are nasty women. God, well, how do you like explain that? Like, what was going on in the psyche of women when they heard that?
No, but it was good. Like it's an empowerment thing, right? Like this is like neoliberal kitsch. It's like taking something that becomes kitschified. Like in the like I've seen like Instagrammable pieces of art where it's like millennial pink pastel, but it's just written like nasty woman on it.
Yeah.
Or like that one cartoonist that she was in the New Yorker, where it's like during COVID, it's like the messy room.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She was in the New Yorker.
It was in the New Yorker. It was like the messy room where it's like the woman with like the wine bottle and
What is her name? Lainey?
Lainey Monaire.
Yeah.
It's like this is a cheat. Like this is a happy woman.
Yeah, and this is a happy woman. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she always draws her like cellulite on herself. You know? She always is like very clear to do that.
Yeah. She did a recent one about like there's like a strong antinatalist vibe going on, but it's quite funny. But so I guess like when your perspective when it comes to advertisements, like did they just scout like whatever up and coming like aging millennial girl boss like by POC woman to do an illustration, or is it like more organic than that?
Now it is.
What happens.
So they used to be, like our entire talent pipeline. It used to be, basically advertising used to be the domain of frustrated artists. So, you'd have people like, who's the guy who everybody loves at Apple, who was like the designer who left?
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah. Well, there was the actual tech guy, Steve Wozniak, but then there was
no. I mean the big design, like the Apple designer. I forgot his name, but he.
Oh, I forget. Yeah. But I know what you're talking about. Did he do he did the IBM commercial where they're smashing IBM, or that was a different guy?
Johnny Ive.
Johnny Ive. Yeah.
I also want to say that there was like they had a trans designer for a while too, who was like, good. They did. But then they quit, for some reason. But they had. So I think Johnny Ive was replaced by some trans person, and then the trans person jumped ship to work for Elizabeth Holmes, and it was like one of the ones who like
what a blunder, eh? What a blunder.
I think that's what happened. But no, so people like Johnny Ive, I've written about Hype Dads, which is also a Sean Monahan idea that I stole from him. But that's, basically advertising is the domain of like frustrated, like good-looking dudes who really wanted to be great journalists or really wanted to be great painters, but they're suburban kids, so they can't really deal with pain. So they go and they become creative directors because it's a very, very comfortable living, and then they spend the rest of their lives kind of like being a frustrated, they're really just a corporate schmuck, but they believe, oh, if I'd just done it differently, I would have been the next Norman Mailer, whatever.
Yeah.
And so advertising is really full of that, formerly is full of that type of people. The thing is, those guys are very, very talented, though. I mean, they really are extremely talented people, or at least they were.
Well, did you go to art school or design school?
No, I went to law school, man. I'm a complete anomaly. I mean, but I'm also a total outsider. I mean, I'm like, I'm a commentator seeing it from the outside. I never really was like, I had some big success in there, but I was always a black sheep. I mean, I never played the game at all,
So, but what were they expecting you then besides like the aesthetic design work? You're more of like the branding.
So again, each team, the way that like the core team or unit of an ad agency is one designer and one copywriter, right?
Right. Right.
So art and copy.
Yeah.
And those two things come together to have any given idea.
Right.
So the copywriter will go and, start writing stuff. He'll think of concepts. He'll write taglines. He'll write scripts. He'll do the copy side, and which is like that. Don Draper is a copywriter.
Yeah.
And then the gay guy, Sal, is his designer. So in the first season, I don't know if you've seen Mad Men, but
I've seen a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah. So design and copy, they meet together. And so traditionally, copy was a little more dominant and design was following copy more.
Mm-hmm.
In today's world, it's reversed. In today's world, copy is way down here and design is way up here.
It's the image is everything almost.
The image is everything. And that's largely because, and I say this all the time, copy cannot innovate without becoming political. It has to have politics in it. Design really can innovate very far without saying any. I mean, you can look fascist, right? Which is like where we're going, but you're not going to really get in trouble for it. Whereas if this that I write, I have a client right now. This is very Longhouse. So this guy wanted to do a brand. I'm not going to say anything specific, where he had this line that is "Don't be a slob," right?
Right.
Simple line, catchy, whatever. It's fine. It's interesting. It's an interesting line. Or take for the other line, most interesting man in the world. I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I drink Dos Equis. In the Longhouse world, they will not let you say anything negative at all. So anything that is, some person inside will be like, that sounds a little negative to me. So like imagine trying to get that line, I don't always drink beer. Some Longhouse Harridan is going to say that, why are you saying that you don't drink beer? This is a beer commercial. Like, why aren't you, like, they're so dumb.
It's funny.
Like get it out. So yeah.
It's very like millennial too. Like, there would be these conversations in I only watched, I know I say I only watched, but I only watched 3 seasons. But you ever watch the show BoJack Horseman?
Yeah, I did watch that.
Yeah, like it's like you can't say that because that'll imply like a negative, and you can't imply a negative because you have to sell something. You have to sell a movie, and it's like you can't say a negative. You have to say like it's like mind-numbingly, soul-destroyingly affirmative. All
the time. Right, exactly. And all these women are getting paid to say that. They're in there saying, "Oh, I've been told don't be negative." And so now the reason I had to start my own thing was I was just like,
but you're selling beer. Who cares? You're selling beer.
Say whatever you want. You're selling it to dudes. Dudes are negative. Say anything.
Yeah.
Whereas now they're gonna all push you into saying these same stupid things. If I see one more brand guide, so brand guides, you have all the visuals, all the core meaning. So there's always 3 adjectives in there of like what you've seen the 3. Have you seen the 3 adjectives before?
What is this? The 3 adjectives.
So every brand will have like 3 adjectives that describe them, right? And it'll be on a big page in there. So it'll be like, well, who are we? We're courageous, innovative, and
fresh.
Fresh. Yeah, right. Exactly. I swear to God, every single brand deck I have seen from a big company in the past 5 years has bold in it. Bold.
Yeah. Bold.
Every single one is bold. And it's so hilarious because it's like, aren't you supposed to be differentiated? But like the people that are writing these words are just like, yeah, bold. Bold worked for Uber. Why shouldn't bold work for McDonald's? We're bold. Everybody's bold, right? We're all bold.
That was it's starkly different than like what used to be like corporations. I mean, it was still just like marketing something, but it actually had like I guess you could say an innovative vision. I mean, I remember I bought this. I always wanted to do a video on it. I bought this trade book that I think was from Toshiba. It was called the New Nomads, where it was like about electronics within clothing that would like place you in like different environments and so forth. It was all very like futurist type of like lingo, right? It was about like, but it was very like theory cellish in a way. It was sort of like when Zizek did the Abercrombie and Finch edition in like 2006. But that was like, I guess they probably got some grad student to come in and talk about futurism. But it was very like Y2K. It was the very early 2000s, right? And I loved it. But because I'm a millennial. That's but nowadays it seems that there is no vision that even corporations have. It's just like the same like eternal nowness of like, well, you have to appeal to these demographics, or you have to have like a mind-numbingly positive, kitschy vision of yourself that's like, like even commercials, like it's incredible.
So the thing you're talking about is a what we would call a strategy deck, where there's some kind of interesting new, they give them names, right? Like, the new nomads, and it'll be like a very, like your type of stuff, Gio. Like you should write these things, honestly. And you could make so much money writing these things. Like Sean Monahan. Have you heard of Sean Monahan?
I've heard the name. Yeah.
So he's the guy who I just had him on my pad. He's the guy who came up with Normcore. He's a genius. They call him a trend forecaster. But really, he's an advertising strategist, and he makes these decks. You can slang these things for an ungodly amount of money. I mean, you should do this, Gio. I'm telling you, because you're great at writing. Like, make up some name for a new type of consumer, and just like talk about them. Like that's all you have to do. And
things, but an ironic.
Yeah.
I'm gonna censor that one out for YouTube, but like, it's like something like, I guess, say like, what do millennials love? It's like you could just pin them. You could pin down the soy-lennial to their repetitive wants.
Yes, just write the soy-lennial, like the soy-lennial report, and just like talk about them for 20 pages, and then sell that to like AT&T.
Nostalgia for specific. All like have liminal spaces everywhere. It'll be
They love that.
The ad campaign will guide you through a back rooms.
That's a good idea. I love the whole backrooms thing. I find that so fascinating. I really like that.
Some people are very creative with it too, but
what do they do? Like, so this.
Well, there's different lore to it. There's different levels. You should look. They have this guy. He's 19 years old now. His name is Kane Pixels. He did these animations doing Blender and like taking like an old VHS and like finding a way to connect it digitally. And A24, the big horror, indie horror, they gave him a movie. He's doing a movie.
Really?
So,
What's his name?
His name is Kane Pixels.
King Pixels.
Yeah. There's this other one called Lost in Hyperspace, which is more narrative, and there's different levels, and like it takes a long time to do this stuff on your own. But I guess he's got a whole team of animators.
Yeah, this is cool, man. This is very cool.
So you were saying about like the world of it, like
anyway, sorry. No, go ahead. Sorry. What were you saying?
Oh no, I was gonna ask you, like you were saying about like the grinding positivity. Like, do you remember? Now I'm assuming that you are an older millennial, or you're a Gen Xer. What are you?
No, I'm older millennial. Yeah.
I'm
38, so I think.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So, do you remember in the mid 90s, they had, and this is like a classic example of like the Gen X MTV generation marketing. They had this like hipster brand called, what was it called? No Soda or No Label Soda, where it was sort of like negative, and it was like we were resisting branding. It was very hipster-ish. It was very a
few of those, like No Label, and it was like, I remember that vaguely. Yeah.
Like that can't exist anymore in some ways.
What do you mean?
Well, like you were saying, like it's too like self-referential and aware. And I guess nowadays people, like marketing executives, they want like, something that's very like in your face and like you were saying, bold and fresh and like not.
So it reminds me also of one of my also favorite ever campaigns. And this, again, I mark in my whole, my own timeline that I build for this. I mark this campaign in advertising as the split moment, as I said in 2014, which is Gap. Right when speaking of Sean Monahan came up with Normcore. I don't know if you remember Normcore. Do you remember that?
This is like brands like Champion and like, you know, bodybuilders using Champion and like Gap
So
and like
yeah, like in
American Apparel.
Suddenly all the kids started dressing like dads, right? It was the New Balance, it was the floppy hat, it was like the college sweater and the khakis. You know, there was a big moment of that. Even Kanye was doing this kind of at the time. Remember his Wave Runner shoes, the Kanye Wave Runners? Those were totally like ultra normcore. And because they looked like New Balances. They basically looked like bubbly New Balances. So during that time, Gap, because somebody clearly inside Gap knew what they were doing, they ran a campaign called Dress Normal, which was fantastic. It was so good. And it was exactly what like culture had gone way left. And it was now obviously time to like start going, you know, if not right,
centrist,
at least like non-individualistic, right? And that's kind of like what you're saying is these things were just blank, like brandless things. And
ironically enough, Oatly also did this. Like they had this negative campaign where it's like, I know you don't want it, you want this, but you know, it was actually quite brilliant. I had a Twitter thread about it when people were dunking on Oatly. I said, well, their branding back in the early 2000s was actually kind of good. Like it was,
Oatly, they weren't around in the early 2000s. Oatly?
No, it was like, it wasn't, it was like 2012 or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like a self-aware.
You mean those things that was like a lot of the writing? It was like a long panel. Yeah. I actually wrote one of those.
Oh my God.
I literally wrote one of those. Yeah. I mean, this was like later on and it was for social media, but I actually wrote one. So there was this period in advertising where, again, I mark this as the split. There was culture wanted to go populist. It wanted to go right. It wanted to not be about being individual. It wanted to be about joining the herd, right? And Normcore Dress Normal was that exact moment. And it was so radical. Like it was such a radical campaign. I loved it. I was so into it. But they got in trouble. Like Gap got in trouble for running it because it was like, what do you mean normal? Who's normal? You can't say who normal is.
Yeah.
And so at that point, culture literally like sheared in two, where they started forcing people to be individualistic on crack. So we're having like face tattoos and 27 color hair, you know, like 6ix9ine and X.
Yeah, like Takeshi Snitch 9. Yeah.
Yeah. Like those guys are like, I mean, not that XXXTentacion is actually really cool. And Drake, I don't know if you know that story, but
wait, who?
Drake.
No way.
Yeah, really? Dude, it's like literally true. Like Drake basically had XXXTentacion.
Holy. What for
story.
Though? Was there like some kind of beef going on?
Yeah, so XXXTentacion like talked about Drake's mom like publicly several times. Yeah, and then Drake rapped about like clearly referenced it on a song later.
It's like they claim Suge Knight had Eazy-E infected, you know.
Infected. Wow.
Yeah, they have this story that he got one of his goons to inject him forcibly with AIDS blood.
With AIDS, nice.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you never know, but
yeah.
But anyways, go on.
So at that time, so again, culture went in like two directions. It like the Longhouse made it go ultra individual, and you know that's when you're seeing breast scars on ads because you couldn't go any further left without going into absurdity. And so they went into absurdity because they were forcing it to go that way. But really, culture wanted to go right. You know, just like it did in the 80s, just like it did in the 50s, culture wanted to go the other way. But the people in charge no longer would allow it. And that Dress Normal was that exact moment because it was a genius campaign. They should have stuck with it, but they got literally like in trouble. You know, people wrote think pieces like, this is not okay, you know? And so, that was kind of the moment where all that stuff changed, I think. But I think we crave that type of populist message, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, there is some like I said in the beginning of the show, there's always like the fear of being co-opted as just another brand, but at the same time, like there's always these natural waves within the gist of any culture or civilization. There's always going to be like a sort of tension that builds up on the other end. Um, but what's interesting is that I before we get to Vibe Camp, uh, what was it's like the like cliched point of like, well, what's your red pill journey? But but someone like you, I guess, is like, when I was reading the Vibe Camp piece, and other pieces in your Substack, like, you're not the typical, you don't have the typical upbringing of what creates like hair chud of the dissident right. Like you come from like a theater kid background. Your parents were they were part of the theater, or they were
Yeah.
creative types. What were they?
They were, yeah, they were total theater, like absolute theater
Yeah.
kids, theater academics. They're
Mhm.
professors and stuff.
And
Yeah,
so you had like, and you were talking about how you know um you had more of like that creative and academic background growing up, and like, I guess you would say upper middle class liberal academic background that is in the art world and the theater world. So you don't have like a typical foundation of like what makes up a lot of people in the right, who either like they're millennials that come from quote unquote flyover states, or they you know they're in like engineering or in academia, well, or maybe not academia, but they're in like more white collar professions, but still have that sort of foundation within working class Americana. So you're like a sort of exception to the rule. You come from the class of the enemy, if you will. So
well, I definitely come from the class of the enemy. Let me just say, I was not upper middle class, though. I mean, my
well,
parents were the dregs of a wealthy doctor family and
mm,
a finance WASP family in Chicago and Cleveland, respectively. But my parents were both the end of the line,
they were
if you will, right?
bohemians.
Like they
Yeah.
were. So they grew up very privileged, but they abandoned all that. They became, oh, they're the ultimate boomers, right? They're
Yeah.
like,
They squandered it.
yes, they wanted, oath of poverty type of boomers. You know what I mean?
Oh
So
man.
I
Yeah.
grew up I would say lower middle class, basically. Like if I
Right.
really, we never had any fancy at all. I mean, we had, we didn't have nice cars. We didn't have nice vacations. Like we didn't do any of that. So, and I grew up in a very black area. I was like like if you had met me when I was, I was pretty fly for a white guy, like FUBU outfit. Like I was straight, earring. I was like
Yeah.
total black white guy when I was in high school. So yeah, I mean, I definitely was exposed to that type of, working class, I guess you could say, which isn't really
Mhm.
even like the working class. That's just like the welfare class.
Lower
But
prole, yeah, lumpen prole class, I guess you
yeah,
would say.
exactly. And but I will say that actually that's not true what you're saying about, or I would push back against most people. Like the leaders of our movement are all like, they all come from academic backgrounds, right?
Well,
Or
I'm
they
talking
all
about the
come
foot
from,
soldiers, the leaders who did, yeah,
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 like
yeah,
BAP and Curtis and any of
yeah.
these guys. They all they all basically had pretty,
Well, even like outside of
yeah,
our thing, like for example, Mike Enoch was a computer guy.
yeah,
Um, like that's
yeah,
how. By the way, I gotta say, as much as I maybe disagree with a lot of elements of TRS, you gotta give it to him. Like to survive that long with the amount of like harassment and censorship and
yeah. No, it's
debanking,
true.
yeah, like there's got to be some kind of computing there.
You know,
Like
I went on that show.
which one? The Daily Show? Or
Yeah,
oh
I
my
went on it.
god!
I went on it.
Oh my
I
god!
had no idea what I was doing. I did not understand at all what I was
Was
doing.
it Enoch and Sven, or was it?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was Enoch
yeah, yeah.
and whoever that other guy is. And
Sven, yeah.
yeah, I did not know what I was getting
They didn't
into
find out
whatsoever.
about your
Me being
your
pissed. No, I told them.
Nuremberg law
That's
status.
why I went on. I said I emailed them and I was like, hey, like like, can I come on? And they were like, sure. So I went on.
They do that, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. I'm sure you can still find it. It exists there somewhere. I mean, that put me on some type of ADL list, but I mean, I go on. I don't like, I try to defend, to a degree. So
yeah, they're not fans of BAP either. So or Curtis Yarvin. So
yeah, no, they hate.
Well, the infamous one with Borzoi and Curtis. That was
what was that?
Funny.
What
well, Curtis went on Borzi's show.
Oh yeah,
Hyper Podcastism, and they talked about the Austrian painter for 4 hours, and Curtis was trying to say, well, the Austrian painter was gay, and that was pretty funny. Like I'm not the biggest okay, let's talk about the class thing, because I'm not the biggest fan of Curtis's recent stuff because he okay, listen, I know it's a meme, and he would even admit he's smart enough to know it's a meme, but I said when the infamous Elves article came out, I said, like, there's a neglect of, listen, this is very self-serving. Because like I come from like a blue collar working class background, but yet went to academia, and like I said, he ignores the dark hobbits. The dark hobbits are like working class, like kind of like Justin Murphy. I know Justin Murphy's getting some heat recently for the Bat book, but let's face it, Justin Murphy, like me, comes from working class background. I didn't go to the PhD level, I went to the grad level, but I was contemplating getting a PhD. I applied, but I didn't apply hard enough because I knew it wasn't for me. But master's level, whatever. Come from working class background, go into an intellectual profession. It's like that is what I consider the dark hobbit. Where Curtis, he doesn't maybe he doesn't believe those people exist. I don't know. Like him, so defend your.
But would a dark hobbit be? What would a dark hobbit be exactly? How would you describe the dark hobbit? Because the dark elf is essentially an elite who is curious about defecting, more or less, right? I mean, that's what a dark elf is. So what's a dark hobbit?
The dark elf starts off from a position of the upper echelon.
Yeah, right.
To me, the dark hobbit is someone who works his way up from a working class background, but then has uses those intellectual tools to sort of, have an affirmation with the chuds, quote unquote.
See, I don't think that that's what a dark hobbit would be, though, because I think the analogy of a dark hobbit would have to be somebody who is grilling football Sunday. But then somehow is telling their friends on grilling football Sunday, you know what I mean? That would be a
that's
hobbit, right?
Yeah, I guess someone who manages to balance a number of intellectual pursuits, but also having the same grafting onto chud culture that, for example, me, I love pro wrestling and new metal and all this stuff us millennials, early 2000s edge culture that millennial young white men grew up with. It's that affectation is there. So that's a good point. That's a good point.
Or like a bog beef, right? You and bog beef are kind of similar. 100%. You're very intelligent, but you also are rooted in the definitely in Hobbit culture originally.
Oh yeah.
I feel like you guys are more okay, now I see.
Let's face it, to be brutally honest, a lot of us are failed normies, but that's another issue entirely.
Well, I think we all are, right? Everybody, that's what I was saying in Vibe Camp is we all tried.
Yeah.
But
did we try though? Because did you, in your case, being a failed normie, is it more that you failed, or did you press the button on the on the vest, if you will?
I ultimately pressed the button on the vest, but I really did not I had a very hard time fitting in, I did well, but it was miserable, man. I mean, I was really, it was taking every ounce of willpower to not quit every single day. I mean, the most miserable days of my life where I remember coming home from my big agency jobs and just being I am overwhelmed with despair. I hate working for these people. I hate going in there. I it really and it was so hard for me to not just.
Was it just that you were
leave,
surrounded by stupid people, or is it the sort of culture of like?
It's the culture. It's this
Yeah.
culture of apology, and I have to listen to this project manager talk about her cat for 20 minutes, and like I have to be like, yeah, oh wow, Susie, how was your weekend? You know, oh, interesting. You know, like you just have to play this thing, and it's just it's killer for the soul. You know, I mean, for a creative, you know, it really is just pure pain. So yeah, man. I mean, I tried.
But you were saying about the class thing, yeah.
Oh yeah. So I would say that like somebody like you and Bog Beef, I see why you're calling it Dark Hobbit. But like in a way, you're more of like a Hobbit whisperer, right? Like I feel like you're delivering delivering the Hobbit ideas to the elves, kind of.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, like, here's why these things matter to these people. And like, here's why there's like kind of a beauty to it in a way, you know?
Right.
So,
I even like Bog Beef because I think like Bog Beef, he like remembers, or he is a great like historian of, I would say, maybe an older form of Southern culture in America that is more sophisticated, is more grounded in tradition. Because nowadays, like, unfortunately, you have like on both ends, you have the decimation of like the Appalachians in the South through, offshoring and drugs and so forth. And also you have like the commodification or like the popification of it. Like, for example, mainstream country music is like basically just pop music with an acoustic guitar. Like so, they're being assaulted on both ends. So I think that's why Bog Beef is such, Bog Beef America is such a valuable resource, because they, remember a distinction or like a dignity to Southern culture that, either Southern culture is like evil and like Western libtards treat it like, big city libtards are like people that are Ellis Islanders. And, like, I say that because like my mother's a literal Ellis Islander. Like she like, first she came to Canada, she like literally passed through Ellis Island. So, but like, the buying into American liberalism is like, you have the same attitude towards Southerners as the Khmer Rouge did to like, to the bourgeoisie. So there's a great, but I steal this take, I steal that take from Mystery Grove, who had this great tweet where he's like, academics of historians of the Civil War said that, Reconstruction should have lasted longer because it was great, it was liberal, it was like democracy. Then there's other historians of the Civil War who say that Reconstruction should have lasted longer because it could have resembled the Khmer Rouge. So,
Did you see the stuff? If somebody in our space on that guy Shelby Foote.
Oh, I don't know if I've seen this.
Shelby Foote is this amazing person who's in Ken Burns's documentaries about like the Civil War.
Ken Burns had to like denounce it.
And it turns out this guy Shelby Foote, who's like the perennial Southerner, is half-ish. I just learned. I was like, oh my god. Well, and another huge slave owning class was the Native Americans. Nobody talks about that at all. They owned a ton of slaves.
No, but didn't you know that according to like Hotep historiography, that like the natives, they were black people? Did you know this?
Oh no, I didn't know.
You know what's funny is that Hoteps and Mormons have the same. Like Mormons believe that they were like the natives had the mark of Shem.
Oh right. Yeah, right. It's the same lineage. Yeah, that makes sense. Right.
I'm not casting shit on our Mormon friends, but But anyways, like, so like without getting the cliche, like what's your red pill journey? Like how did you become like, because like I know people like this who are like, academics or sons and daughters of academics, but it's sort of like the bohemian, like you were saying, vow of poverty. I'm a starving artist or starving academic. Still very like libtard coded. So like, how did you become interested in like more right-wing ideas? Like, what was your journey, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, I was a libtard for sure. I had my, angry communist phase for about a year.
Occupy Wall Street.
What?
Occupy Wall Street, was this during?
Yeah, I was in Occupy Wall Street for sure. And I grew up so liberal that being right wing was essentially Satan, right? I mean, it's like it was. But both my parents viewed progressivism as their religion, and both of their families view it as.
Whoa.
That. So to be right wing was literally the worst thing you could ever be. I, from a very early age, though, it was obvious that I was just a right wing person. Like, I think when you read The Fountainhead and you love The Fountainhead, then you're never going to really be a liberal. So I loved The Fountainhead. I was obsessed with The Fountainhead, from an early age. And I studied philosophy in college, and I always was the utilitarians I thought were the dumbest people on earth. I was like, are you kidding me? I couldn't believe anybody actually believed that. And so I was always, it was always there. But when you're, it's like being gay and a Catholic. It takes a very long time for the truth to bubble to the surface, And
surprisingly, there are a lot of gay Catholics. Andy Warhol was a gay Maronite, or was it Maronite, or something like that.
There does seem to be a lot of gay Catholics.
Yes, my mother, was born in the country of gay Catholics, Brazil.
Right? Is that's gay Catholic capital of the world?
Yeah. The gay Catholic capital of the world is Brazil. Yes, Brazil, right. There's and they're still practicing Catholics too that are gay. There's trans people in Brazil that are practicing Catholics.
Oh, I'm sure. It's a bit popular, right? Anyway, so I, it was just slow but sure. I was an Obama 1 voter.
Whoa!
I remember being in New York City with my diverse group of upper crust friends, because despite not being a rich kid myself, I've been surrounded by them my entire life just because of the paths I've been on. But it's the funny thing about being upper middle class in America, and you can tell me what you think about this. When you're upper class in middle America, what's incredible is you never, ever touch the other classes. So you're stuck in this membrane, and Marx was so right about the
bourgeoisie. In Canada, it's the same way, by the way.
Yeah. You're in your class and you do not move. You never go up, you never go down. You're just in this little bubble, and you're pretending like you're elite, right? This is what Marx was so right about the bourgeoisie. Bourgeoisie spend their entire lives signaling that they're elite when they never are. They never make it. They never make it to the next. And so I was in that. I was very firmly bourgeoisie. So I was doing all of the things pretending like we were rich, and we weren't really rich. And so I was in this world. I was in this milieu. I voted for Obama 1, was very, of course, very passionate about Obama. And I remember when he won, the girls I was with were sobbing. It was such a beautiful victory. And then 4 years later, I was completely so, and then I was big Trump. I was huge Trump 2016, lost 75% of the people in my life from that.
Holy,
lost the rest during COVID. So
very common story, by the way.
Very common, right? Story. It was a great cleansing period, and it took me forever, man. It took me 35 years to really finally arrive at the comfortability of who I am, right? And so it was just very similar to a lot of other people. The ideas were always there. It just I had to find them and find other people who believed in them, and be able to feel like I wasn't such a freak for having these opinions, basically.
Are your parents still around? Or?
Yeah, they're still around, but you could imagine how, my dad, they're divorced, but I think my dad has basically come around entirely, but he will never admit it to me because he gave me so much. I come from a family where I was getting emails in the middle of the night from uncles being like, you,
wow.
Crazy, dude. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, friends being like, I would just write them email like, hey, how's it going, Ben? and they'd be like, you know, "Fucking die, you scum." You know, like I was definitely that. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So
Yeah, because it's go matrilineally. So
yeah. Yeah.
oh my god. So your old man's come around to it, or he's like accepted it.
I
Like,
think he has to have. I mean, it's like
yeah.
at this point, looking around, I mean, give me a break. Is he really going to be on the side of Blackstone? I mean, it's like I don't think he can actually digest that. But he would never. You know, he gave me so much for so long.
It's like saying you're gay to your parents.
Yeah, it is.
Like back in the day. Yeah,
it's exactly the same. It's literally like the parallels are unbelievable. Like how it is like that.
And your mother?
I mean, my mother is like straight up.
You're her son. She's got to accept. Well, you know. Yeah.
I mean, not really. You know, I mean, she tries to accept it, but she's like straight up, you know, very typical artsy. She's like Meet the Fockers mom.
Oh yeah,
you know, like the very typical, like kind of
boomer hippie
mom, exactly. And so for her, you know, if I was trans, she would be delighted. You know,
that'd be like, so that golden calf right there.
Right, exactly.
No, I'm half on my mother's side. I'm half Calabrese, but like the Greek side of it. Like her maiden name's very Greek. And my father is Marchigiano, which is Central Italian, which is like the closest to Roman you could like possibly get.
Awesome.
So
that's cool.
That's why I have like more of an eclectic mix, because like more Calabrese and Napolitans, and like other Southern Italians, for some reason, they found their way to Canada. But in America, like especially New York, especially like in Long Island, you have Sicilians all the time. In New Jersey, they're, you know, Sicilians, but for some reason, like the mix here in Ontario was more like Calabrese and from Naples. So
interesting. Yeah, that part of Southern Italy. Yeah, that's cool.
Oh yeah. But also I wanted to ask you though, before we get to the vibe camp, like, because I have people that like they come back to Christianity, for example. You know, me myself, when I was younger, I was sort of like a New Ager. And you know, then I sort of more or less realized that I'm predisposed to Catholicism. But but for you, like, what does that look like in terms of the example of taking your own faith more seriously within, I'm assuming, like either conservative or Orthodox? Are you conservative, or what are you?
Well, no. So I would be what you would call Hasidic, as in terms of my actual beliefs, because that's who I study with. And the Hasidic movement is, to be honest, man, I still can't really tell you exactly the differences because I'm just learning it. But like, I do believe in, for example, the separation of the sexes during prayer. Like, I think that that's really good. And so the Chabad I go to, there's a wall. The women go to one side, the men go to the other side. And then, I mean, you know, after you pray, you then get back together.
Yeah.
But I think that it's good. Like, I believe in those types of things.
Well, even certain Catholic churches in Italy, they used to do that too.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess, like, but what does it entail? Like, when did you realize that you started to like change denomination and take your faith more seriously?
That was like 4 years ago. And it was, you know, I had some friends that were getting into it. You wouldn't believe how many Hasids that you see today, you know, the black hats who look, a ton of them are seculars who have adopted it later.
Whoa.
You know? You don't realize that, but it's like those guys are, I would say 30. I mean, look, I'm not going to give a percentage because I don't actually know, but a lot of them I know personally are people who have adopted it later.
Yeah.
So, you know, I started hanging out with people here that were doing it. I'd always had this like really poisonous relationship because it made me so angry. You know, like I was always pissed off about it. And I just kind of realized at a certain point, well, look, I can't change this. And it's like a genetic disposition. Like when I started reading the Torah, I was like, oh, like this is obviously what I'm supposed to be doing. It's like, it's like, it's an exception to a rule, to an exception to a, you know, it's like, it's very legal. It's like a very legal religion. And that's kind of how my brain works anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I tried going to a church here once, like there's this like the Justin Bieber like cool kids church called like Hillsong or one of the there's
Oh,
one
like youth reform
yeah,
something
it's
church,
one of
yeah.
the there's a bunch of these in LA. And it's like
Oh,
really
man.
like hot people like dressing up and like a nightclub going to church. I went to one once here because I was just kind of dabbling, and it was like going like like
Oh my
singing like
god.
Christian rock. And I was like, oh man, this is like not like I gotta
Yeah.
get out of here. Like this is not my type of thing. But once I started hanging out with the Hassids, I was like, oh, okay, these guys are real cool. And
Like, was it ever present in your life, but not to the same
it
extent?
was present because I was always going to, my family, anytime I visit family, you're
Yeah, it would be
going
more of
to
a
temple
family.
or
Yeah.
you're talking about Judaism or, and again, my best friend would had Shabbat every Friday and went to
Yeah.
temple. So it was in my world, but my parents were totally non-religious. There was no religion at
Mm.
all.
Mhm. Interesting. But that's what makes like your journey towards the E-Right like even like more interesting because, not just because of your upbringing, but like I guess, the like I mean it's more of a typical story now. Like there's a lot of people that I know who like for example, a lot of people I know who are anons because their parents would absolutely disown them if they
Yeah.
found out that they went to the voting booth as a family and you voted for Trump. It's like, yeah, that would be you know,
um, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I think I mean you got to get over that, right? I mean, you shouldn't be afraid of what your parents think. I'll tell you,
true,
but I mean,
true.
obviously there are reasons to be anon, and that
Yeah,
I definitely do understand. So
yeah. And like you said, like you made that choice to like, you know, to plunge the button on the vest when it comes to
yeah,
advertising, but yeah. Um so anyways, let's move on finally. Uh Vibe Camp.
vibe
Vibe
comp.
Camp. Thank you for listening to the Content Minded podcast, where every Wednesday there are interesting guests, amazing ideas, solo streams, and discussions on a diverse array of topics from art, philosophy, history, and more. The free version will be available both here on YouTube and as a downloadable link on Anchor and Spotify, as well as on Substack. Each week, the full, uncensored, and spicier version will now be available on both Patreon and Substack, where you will have access to the full archive of both Content Minded and of Giant Reviews, where I break down interesting texts every week, including other exciting paywalled articles and good content. Thank you all. Please like, share, and subscribe. God bless. Goodbye. Help keep the content renaissance alive. Too sweet.